Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I am Adebola Adeduba. Here are stories making the headlines beyond the continent. We begin in Europe, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to present his victory plan at an EU summit tomorrow, urging more Western support and invitation to NATO. Zelensky will unveil the details of his plan to lawmakers in Kyiv, which includes requests for long-range weapons and ramped-up sanctions against Russia. The plan also seeks to bolster Ukraine's defenses and air defense capabilities to force Moscow to negotiate. Zelensky has described his proposal as a bridge to the peace summit that he has proposed for November, but Russia has stated it will not attend.
Партнери України, яким вже був представлений цей наш план, поставились до нього дуже практично, уважно. Команди зосереджені зараз на деталях заради дієвої підтримки. Команди почали працювати. Завтра я представлю план перемоги на засідання Європейської Ради.
Meanwhile, NATO defense ministries are expected to discuss Ukraine's victory plan during their upcoming two-day talks. The plan outlined by Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky calls for increased Western support, including an invitation for Ukraine to join NATO. Zelensky's chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, confirmed that NATO membership is a key part of the plan. The plan also includes requests for long-range weapons and ramped-up sanctions against Russia.
Defense Minister. Well, clearly, the victory plan we discussed. We are also discussing it with allies. It will no doubt also be on the table this week when, of course, we have on Thursday the meeting between Ukraine and NATO on Thursday night with the defense ministers.
In the meantime, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says Berlin is keen to explore avenues towards ending the conflict in Ukraine, which was ignited by Russia's invasion. And speaking to members of parliament on Wednesday, Scholz said he remains open to discussions involving Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, the Chancellor stressed that any decisions will not be made ever over the heads of Ukraine and without the agreement of Germany's close allies. Germany has been Ukraine's second largest military supporter following the United States. Scholz's remarks coincided with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky unveiling his much-anticipated victory plan to bring an end to Russia's invasion, firmly rejecting any territorial concessions and calling for increased Western support.
Es ist aber auch, und das will ich sagen, die Zeit, in der wir neben der klaren Unterstützung der Ukraine auch alles tun müssen, um auszuloten, wie wir es hinbekommen können, dass dieser Krieg nicht immer weitergeht.
And to unpack this, I am joined by Bolu Michael B., foreign policy analyst. Good evening from here. Let me kick off by asking, this conflict between Russia and Ukraine has been on for long. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, in Lord Acton's letter to Bishop Creighton said that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. For Russia, this war is about gaining absolute power over the neighboring countries, and for Ukraine, it's about maintaining their territorial integrity. In addition, Russia is all about maintaining its influence beyond the region of Europe, but all over the world. But is that the case right now? No, that's not the case. What we're having instead is the destruction of life and properties on both ends, and it becomes more complicated, being that there's no resolution so far in anywhere in several months, because both parties are not willing to sit at the table. And even when one party wants to sit, the other does not. So it's high time the international community began to call both sides together in order to have a negotiated settlement.
So what are the likely implications of Russia's refusal to attend the proposed peace summit in November? And then how will this affect the chances of a negotiated settlement to the conflict?
Well, this question reminds me of the philosophical question that if a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody there to hear it, will it make a sound? It takes two to tango in a conflict like this, so there can't be any way forward if Russia is deciding not to sit at the negotiation table. It only means that Ukraine will be talking to itself. But the implication of this is that the war will be ongoing. And when the war is ongoing, it means that there will be continuous destruction of lives and properties. So it's a really complicated issue. And, I just hope that, that there will be enough pressure on both sides to sit and actually discuss their issues.
How about Ukraine's request for this long-range weapons and also ramped-up sanctions against Russia? How does it align with the goals of its victory plan? And what are the potential risks and benefits of this approach?
Sometimes I don't really understand Zelensky. It confuses me at times. I mean that I don't understand why he's having a victory plan at this stage of the war. He's like calling victory before the end of the war, and that can actually provoke Russia, to answer your question, it does align with their victory plan. Should Russia decide to bulldoze in the sense that it will put pressure on, it will weaken the economy and the military strength of Russia, and that might pressure them to negotiate and sit at the table. On the flip side, it has a risk being that Russia can choose to retaliate. They have these weapons, they have these long-range missiles, and they can actually ramp up their military supplies in a second through other countries that support them. So there's a chance that Russia would retaliate because they possess these weapons as well.
Okay, let's talk about the key obstacles to Ukraine's accession to NATO. How can alliance's defense ministers address these challenges during their upcoming talks?
Okay, I think the key obstacle before Ukraine is the fact that they cannot join NATO right now. The war itself is Ukraine's obstacle, meaning that NATO ordinarily does not admit countries that have ongoing conflict or are unstable in any way. And the chances that they're going to concede or give Ukraine a concession is very low, being that it will set a negative precedence and for any other country in the future that may be in Ukraine's situation, they will always make reference to the concession they made for Ukraine, if you get what I mean. And so the second obstacle before them is the NATO member states, being that, they might fear that if they admit Ukraine, it would provoke Russia, and Russia may come for them either militarily or through economic sanctions or other means. So in order to protect their own security or their territorial integrity and their economy, they may choose to not support Ukraine joining NATO. So what the defense ministers can do, pending when Ukraine can join NATO, is to actually ramp up Ukraine defense systems while they look for ways that they can manage their relationship with Russia wisely.
Well, thank you so much for your time on the news. Michael B., foreign policy analyst. Many thanks indeed.
Thank you for having me.
We'll go on a short break. When we return, magnitude 5.9 quake hit Turkey's eastern Malatya province. Details shortly. Thank you for staying tuned. The UK Parliament on Wednesday proposed to legalize assisted dying. Apologies for that. Still in Europe, the House of Commons will get a free vote on Labour MP Kim Leadbeater's terminally ill adults bill, allowing them to vote their conscience rather than along party lines. The bill, limited to those with 6 to 12 months to live, is reported to require a patient's wish to die to be signed off by a judge and 2 doctors in its current form. This proposal has sparked concern from opponents. It has, however, also garnered support in numbers. Currently, assisted suicide is banned in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. In Scotland, it is not a specific criminal offence, but it can leave a person open to other charges, including murder.
I think the time is right to have the debate and to have the discussion, and I do think the public mood has changed. We've also got the benefit of having seen 31 other jurisdictions have an assisted dying policy, and we can learn from the best of those, but we can also maybe look at things that we wouldn't want to do in this country, and that is my job of getting that bill right, so there are very robust, very secure safeguards and protections in place for people, but also giving people at the end of their life that choice. About disabled rights. This is not about disabled people. It's not about old people. It's about people who are terminally ill and the rights that I believe that they should have. So there's a broad debate to have, and I hope I can facilitate that debate well. But at the heart of this is the fact that at the moment people are taking their lives, losing their lives in really difficult, horrible circumstances, and that needs to change.
My father had multiple sclerosis, secondary progressive, and his GP had diagnosed him as terminal. He had lost pretty much all the mobility in his body and was reduced to a really bare function of physical ability. And he was losing the last shreds of his bodily dignity. And he knew that the ability to take his own life was something that only he would be able to control for a short amount of time.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that the government is considering imposing sanctions on far-right Israeli Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. The decision comes after the ministers made abhorrent comments and engaged in concerning activities in the West Bank. The Prime Minister emphasized that the government is taking the situation seriously and will not hesitate to take action if necessary.
Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich had said that starving 2 million people in Gaza might be justified and moral. National Security Minister Ben-Gvir called settlers who killed a 19-year-old on the West Bank heroes. After my visit to Israel and Palestine last February, having witnessed the damage that these extremist ministers in the Netanyahu government are doing, I called on the last government to sanction them. The last government refused, but we now learn that the former Foreign Secretary was considering this. So will the Prime Minister now sanction Ministers Ben-Gvir and Smotrich?
We are looking at that because they're obviously abhorrent comments, as he rightly says, along with other really concerning activity in the West Bank, but also across the region. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire. The death toll has surpassed 42,000, and access to basic services is becoming much harder. And Israel must take all possible steps to avoid civilian casualties, to allow aid into Gaza in much greater volume, and provide the UN and humanitarian partners the ability to operate effectively.
A 5.9 magnitude earthquake has struck several areas in eastern Turkey. The tremor occurred at 10:46 a.m. in Kale, located in the Malatya province, which was severely affected by two major earthquakes in February 2023. Now, those previous quakes claimed the lives of over 53,500 people in Turkey and nearly 6,000 in neighboring Syria. Officials report there have been no immediate injuries, though emergency services have received several dozens of calls for assistance. Interior Minister Ali Yerlikaya said 3 buildings had partially collapsed in separate locations across the province.
Deprem oluyor değerli izleyiciler. Deprem. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahu Ekber.
After the break, American reproductive rights, Trump's conflicting stance on reproduction raised concerns. Details in a moment. Stay with us. In America, former U.S. President Donald Trump made a surprising claim about his role in reproductive health, stating he is the father of IVF during a pre-recorded town hall with an all-female audience. This comment adds to a series of conflicting views on reproductive rights. Trump emphasized his party's support for IVF and fertilization, but a stance on reproductive issues remains unclear. This latest comment has raised eyebrows, sparking confusion and criticism. Trump's unpredictable views on reproductive rights has been a topic of concern, and this IVF claim only adds to the controversy.
This issue has torn this country apart for 52 years. So we got it back in the States. We have a vote of the people, and it's working its way through the system. And ultimately, it's going to be the right thing. And IVF, you had mentioned before,
right,
IVF.
Let's get this question, because I believe that's what this is about.
Oh, I want to talk about IVF. I'm the father.
You don't hear that every day.
I'm the father of IVF, so I want to hear this question. And we really are the party for IVF. We want fertilization, and it's all the way. And the Democrats tried to attack us on it, and we're out there on IVF even more than them. So we're totally in favor of it. And I said, explain IVF very quickly. And within about 2 minutes, I understood it. I said, no, we're totally in favor of IVF. I came out with a statement within an hour, a really powerful statement with some experts, really powerful. And we went totally in favor, the Republican Party, the whole party.
The United States has issued an ultimatum to Israel, giving it 30 days to increase humanitarian aid access in Gaza or risk a cut in some U.S. military assistance. The letter, sent on Sunday, represents the strongest known written warning from the U.S. to its ally and comes amid a new Israeli offensive in northern Gaza that has reportedly caused a large number of civilian casualties. According to the letter, the United States expressed deep concerns about the deteriorating humanitarian situation, stating that Israel denied or impeded nearly 90% of humanitarian movements between the north and south last month. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, has expressed concerns about the humanitarian situation in northern Gaza. During a UN Security Council meeting, she emphasized that Washington will closely monitor Israel's action regarding delivery of food and humanitarian aid to the region. Thomas-Greenfield stressed that a policy of starvation in northern Gaza would be unacceptable and have severe implications under international and U.S. law. She urged all parties to ensure unhindered delivery of essential aid to those in need.
Policy of starvation in northern Gaza would be horrific and unacceptable and would have implications under international law and U.S. law. The government of Israel has said that this is not their policy, that food and other essential supplies will not be cut off, and we will be watching to see that Israel's actions on the ground match this statement. Colleagues, this weekend, like so many of you, like so many people around the world, I watched in horror as images from central Gaza poured across my screen. Images of what appeared to be displaced civilians burning alive following.
Indian flights have faced precautionary delays and diversions in recent weeks due to a series of Houthi bomb threats. On Tuesday, a passenger aircraft flying from New Delhi to Chicago was subjected to a security threat posted online. As a precaution, the plane made an emergency landing at Iqalit Airport in Canada. Air India reported this incident, noting that it and other local airlines had been subjected to several such threats in recent days. Hawks bombed threats to airlines are not uncommon in India, but it remains unclear what has triggered the recent surge. Air India stated that it is cooperating with authorities to identify those responsible for the threat and is considering legal action to recover damages incurred. And that's all on Beyond the Continent. You can watch News Central live on DSTV, channel 422, Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adeduba. It's bye for now.